Episode 1, Season 21. The cloud has moved and so must you. You've grown comfortable here. Not lazy, not rebellious. Just settled in the rhythm of what was once sacred, in the flow of what once carried fire. But something feels different now, doesn't it? The atmosphere has shifted. The oil feels still. The breath feels elsewhere. It's not that the fire died. It's that the cloud has moved. And so must you. This isn't punishment. This is promotion. But it won't feel like it at first. Because moving with God rarely looks like glory in the beginning. It looks like obedience in the dark. Like taking down tents while others sleep. Like walking with no map. Only a memory of his voice. He's not where you last felt him. He's where you still follow him. And the longer you stay behind, the more what was once holy becomes hollow, because the cloud that covered yesterday's breakthrough is now leading you into a new assignment. You weren't meant to camp around past encounters. You were made to follow presence wherever it leads, even when it leaves comfort, even when it costs you the platform, the people, the pattern you thought you'd always keep. The cloud does not ask for your convenience. It waits for your consecration. So this is your moment of movement, not just to relocate physically, but to recalibrate spiritually, to pull up the stakes of how it's always been and chase the fresh wind into what is becoming now. You don't need certainty. You need sensitivity. You don't need a plan. You need the pillar of cloud by day and the fire by night, just like the beginning, just like when all you had was him, and that was enough. Don't confuse stillness for safety. Sometimes, staying is more dangerous than going, because when glory moves on, anything you cling to becomes an idol, even yesterday's obedience. This is not the season to ask, will he bless his camp? This is the season to ask, where is he going? And will I still follow when it's not familiar? You're not being left behind. You're being invited forward. The cloud has moved, and if you want his face, you can't stay in a place where only his memory remains. Episode 2. You were hidden, but heaven never lost sight of you. You weren't overlooked. You were covered. You weren't forgotten. You were being formed in a world that rewards visibility. God chose to write your name in the folds of silence, not because you lacked value, but because what he placed inside you needed weight before it had voice. While others were being promoted, you were being planted, deep in soil so dark, it felt like death. But you weren't buried. You were rooted. And roots don't scream. They surrender. They don't perform. They anchor. You thought heaven went quiet, but heaven went close, hovering over you like a womb over promise, not rushing the process, not pushing for speed, but guarding the exact timing when what's been forming could finally emerge in glory. You weren't waiting to be noticed. You were being asterisk prepared to carry presence. That doesn't come through platforms, but through purity. And now there's movement, not outside, but within, a trembling in your spirit, a shift in the shadows, a pulse behind the veil, saying, the hiding wasn't punishment, it was preservation. Because exposure without encounter is empty. But hiding with him creates outpouring from him. He never lost sight of you, even when you couldn't feel him, even when the silence was suffocating, even when it seemed like everyone else had a season, except you. What you didn't know was that you weren't being skipped. You were being saturated with oil, with depth, with tears that turned into language heaven could recognize. And now you're not rising for attention. You're rising for assignment. You're not coming out to be seen. You're stepping forward to pour what only hiddenness could carry. You were hidden, but heaven never lost sight of you. And the world is about to see what God always knew was there, not for applause, but for outpouring. Episode 3. The oil is still flowing, but only where there's room. The flow hasn't stopped. The heavens are not closed. The oil is still pouring. But it's not falling on full vessels. It's not falling on the overplanned, the overcrowded, the overstuffed tables, where man's strategy left no seat for the spirit. The oil is still flowing, but only where there's room. This is not a drought. This is a warning. It's not that heaven isn't speaking. It's that we've made no space to listen. It's not that glory left. It's that our rooms became too loud for weight to settle. But here's the grace. God still wants to fill, still wants to rest, still wants to move, but only where he's wanted more than anything else. And where is that? Where the noise is silenced, where the heart is emptied, where the hunger isn't for more, but for him, where the prayer sounds like, you can interrupt anything, rearrange everything, just don't pass us by. Because oil doesn't flow where hands are already full. It flows where vessels are tipped, open, empty, expectant. This is the season of sacred rearrangement, where God is clearing out what we fill with good intentions, but no longer carries his breath. This is the moment where what's packed with excellence is undone by what's marked with yielding. And for those who make room, they will overflow, not with emotion, but with evidence, not with hype, but with holiness, not with more activity, but with undeniable weight. You don't need to shout louder. You need to clear the clutter. You don't need to schedule more. You need to surrender deeper, because he still fills the empty. He still responds to space, not speed. He still seeks out hearts that say, we'd rather have your whisper than the whole world's applause. The oil is still flowing, but only where there's room. And room isn't made by time. It's made by trust. So make room and watch him come like never before. Episode 4. You're not just witnessing glory. You're becoming a vessel that holds it. At first, you thought this outpouring was something to watch, something to attend, something to receive. But now, you realize this glory isn't just falling on you. It's asking to live in you. You are not a spectator of presence. You are a vessel being shaped, to carry it without breaking, to hold it without leaking, to walk with it without owning it. Glory does not rest where it cannot remain, and it does not remain where the vessel is divided. It stays where the heart is whole, yielded, and undistracted. So God is not just pouring out. He's forming containers, not of gold, but of integrity. This is why he's crushed you, not to destroy, but to seal the leaks. This is why he silenced you, not to mute, but to deepen the well. This is why he's hidden you, not to forget, but to fortify the inside before glory comes to rest on the outside. The glory of the Lord is weighty, and he won't place it where pride can leak it. He won't entrust it to hands still fighting to be seen. He won't rest it in mouths still addicted to applause. He's looking for vessels who understand. This isn't mine to display. It's just to dwell. You are not being anointed for performance. You're being hollowed out, so glory has room to live. You're not being gifted to lead. You're being emptied to host, because the future will not be marked by talented voices. It will be marked by trusted vessels, carriers of a presence. So holy, so undeniable, that room shift, without music, that healing flows, without hands, that conviction falls, without words, because glory is there, and glory recognizes where it's safe to stay. You're not just witnessing glory. You're becoming a vessel that holds it. And when you hold it right, you don't just shine, you steward a realm. That changes everything around you. Episode 5. You weren't left behind. You were held for such a time as this. You thought you were overlooked, forgotten, set aside, pushed to the edge, while others ran to platforms, while movements swelled without your name on them. But heaven never forgot you. You weren't disqualified. You were hidden, not because you weren't ready, but because the moment wasn't yet mature enough for your oil. There's a difference between being passed over and being preserved. Preservation is heaven's seal on something it refuses to waste too early. And you were held like a secret, covered like a fire too holy to expose. Until now, this isn't your comeback. This is your commission. This isn't you catching up. This is glory catching up with time. Because the era you were made for isn't the one you watch pass you by. It's the one opening right now beneath your feet. You weren't forgotten. You were chosen to remain. You were the seed, that stayed in the soil, long after the others had sprouted. But you were the one with roots deep enough to survive the storm that burned their branches. The silence was never punishment. It was preparation. The obscurity was a rejection. It was refinement. The delay wasn't denial. It was a divine's protection. Because this outpouring, it won't rest on loud hands or high names. It will rest on those who carry depth, who've been broken, but not bitter, hidden, but not hardened, silent, but still singing under the surface. You are that kind of vessel, not rushed, not recklessly exposed, but ripened by stillness, hollowed by surrender, ready, asterisk truly ready, asterisk to hold what's coming next. You weren't left behind. You were held for such a time as this. And now, the same heaven that sealed you is breaking you open for release. Episode 6. You were hidden be holy, and now you're being unveiled for glory. You weren't overlooked. You were concealed, not rejected, refined, not dismissed, distilled, not buried, but planted for a season when roots mattered more than reach. They didn't see you, but he did, and he wasn't in a rush. Because holy things, he hides them first, not to punish them, but to protect the weight they're called to carry. While others were being celebrated, you were being sanctified. While others were speaking on stages, you were speaking to heaven in the quiet. While others were expanding, you were being excavated. And now that the ground is ready, now that the atmosphere is shifting, he's pulling back the veil, not to show you off, but to show himself through you. This is not your coming out party. This is his entrance through your life. And that's why he had to hide you, because when you finally stepped forward, there could be no trace of self left in your offering. Only him, only purity, only a vessel that's been emptied enough to overflow. You were hidden, not because you were unqualified, but because you were chosen to be set apart, not for popularity, but for presence, not to entertain, but to host, not to gather attention, but to govern atmospheres with silence and surrender. And now the world will see what God has always known. That hidden does not mean forgotten. That obscurity was never punishment. It was preparation for glory that doesn't fade. He's unveiling you, not because you asked for it, but because the earth needs what you carry. It's not about timing anymore. It's about trust. He can trust you now with visibility because he can still find you in the secret place. You were hidden to be holy, and now you're being unveiled for glory. And the weight of heaven is not falling on the loudest, but on the purest. And you are ready. Episode 7. When you have nothing left but oil, you've lost much. People, platforms, possibilities you once thought were divine doors. And piece by piece, it all fell away until you were left with what looked like nothing. But heaven sees differently, because what you have left isn't empty. It's pure, and in the eyes of God, you don't have nothing. You have oil, and oil is everything. This is what they never understood, that the most powerful ones don't look powerful. They look poured out, pressed, quiet, still holding on to what others forgot. The sacred thing. You don't have a title anymore, but you still have a flame. You don't have the support, but you still have the substance. You don't have the spotlight, but you carry the oil. And that oil, it wasn't cheap. It cost you nights on your face, tears no one saw, obedience when it didn't make sense, trust when it hurt. But now the oil is ready. Heaven doesn't anoint the strong. It anoints the yielded. Heaven doesn't pour out on the full. It finds the ones who made room by letting go of everything but him. And now, when others are scrambling for relevance, you're still, silent, holding a flask. And the Lord leans in and says, this is what I'm using. This is what I'm multiplying. This is a fragrance that shifts atmospheres. Not noise, not clamor, but the pure oil of surrender. You thought you were empty, but you were preserved. You thought you were last, but you were set apart. You thought the story was over, but the oil is just beginning to flow. Because when God finds oil, he doesn't waste it. He breathes on it. And when the breath of heaven meets oil, glory falls. Chains break. Nations weep. And the rooms where no one looked become the altars where revival is born. You don't need to strive. Just keep the oil pure. Just keep the flame lit. Just be the one who didn't run out when everything else did. Because when you have nothing left but oil, you have everything heaven needs to pour itself out. Episode 8. You're not drowning. You're being immersed in glory. It feels like too much, too fast, too heavy. Like everything around you is swelling, rising, rushing faster than your footing can hold. And maybe you've whispered under breath, God, am I drowning? But heaven answers differently. Not with rescue, but with revelation. You're not drowning. You're being immersed in glory. And glory doesn't come to the surface. It comes to cover. This is not the end. This is the deep beginning. You prayed for his presence. You asked for the outpouring. You cried for more of him, but didn't know it would feel like losing control. And now you're surrounded, but not by defeat, by divine fullness, not by chaos, but by a kingdom wave that refuses to leave you unchanged. This is what immersion feels like. Overwhelming, uncomfortable, unfamiliar, but undeniably sacred. Because he's not just touching your life. He's saturating it, not just blessing your hands, but baptizing your whole being. You're not being buried. You're being baptized into glory, into wonder, into weight, into the kind of presence that doesn't just fall on you. It redefines you. You can't control this flow. You weren't meant to. You can only yield. Let go and sink deeper. Because where you're going, you can't stand and swim at the same time. You have to surrender your stance to discover his current. And yes, it feels like too much because it's meant to be. Revival was never meant to be manageable. Glory was never designed to be convenient. His outpouring was never intended to fit into your rhythm. It was meant to drown what cannot carry him. So don't resist it. Don't fight to stay afloat in what was. Let yourself go under in what is, because what's drowning now isn't your purpose. It's your pride. It's your fear. It's every version of you that wasn't built for this new level of presence. You're not losing air. You're learning how to breathe in glory. And it doesn't come from lungs. It comes from yielded hearts. You're not drowning. You're being immersed in glory. And when you rise from this, you won't be dripping with survival. You'll be radiating with his nearness. And the world will no longer ask what touched you. They'll ask, who covered you like this? Episode 9. The ones who burn quiet are the ones who break ground. They never made headlines, never went viral, never shook a room with charisma. But the ground beneath them, it shifted, it softened, it yielded, because what burns in secret has the power to break open what's been sealed for generations. They don't walk fast. They walk deep. They don't say much. But when they do, Earth remembers its original assignment. These are the ones who didn't wait for microphones. They became altars. They didn't ask for titles. They asked, how do I carry the weight without losing wonder? They are not famous. They are faithful. And now, in the season of outpouring, heaven is leaning low over the field, not to water performance, but to honor the hidden flame, not to raise platforms, but to break open wells beneath those who burn pure. Because the rain is not falling evenly. It's falling where fire already lives. And those who've carried the fire, when no one looked, they are the ones now cracking the crust of hard places. They are the ones whose footsteps speak louder than sermons, whose shadows heal more than hands, whose tears water revival more than programs. You may have overlooked them, but heaven never did. Heaven tracked every yes, spoken in the dark, every prayer breathed. When the battle screamed louder, heaven watched them walk away from counterfeit crowns just to keep the oil. And now they are breaking ground, not by force, but by faithfulness. They don't need to be seen. They only need to be sent. Because when they show up, heaven pours out, not because they demand it, but because they become a landing strip for glory. The ones who burn quiet are the ones who carry thunder in their bones. They don't come to stir hype. They come to shift the soil, to remind the land that it still remembers Eden, to awaken dormant altars. With nothing but presence and permission, you don't need to go louder. You need to go lower. You don't need more people watching. You need more oil burning. Because it's not the fire that attracts the crowd. That changes history. It's the fire that attracts heaven. You are not being overlooked. You're being assigned. And the ground is listening. For the sound of your feet, the ones who burn quiet are the ones who break ground. And when the ground breaks open, so does the glory. Episode 10. What remains when heaven is poured out? The cloud came. It hovered. It filled the house. Not just with smoke, but with substance. You saw it. You felt it. The room changed. So did your bones. There were no words, only weight. But now the cloud lifts. Not in anger, not in absence, but in rhythm. Because glory moves with purpose, not performance. And you're left in the quiet, not empty, but entrusted. Because this was never just about the outpouring. It was about what would remain after the oil, after the trembling, after the awe, what stays when the room clears. And the only sound left is your heartbeat, still echoing his. This is the holy aftermath, not the closing of revival, but the beginning of a lifestyle, a new order beneath your ribs, a fire that doesn't flicker in noise, but burns deep in the silence. You are not the same. You cannot return. You've been branded by presence, and now the rest of your life must host what touched you. The outpouring wasn't service. It was a shift from visitation to habitation, from wonder to weight, from thrill to truth. And now you carry the evidence, not in your speech, but in your stillness, not in your gifting, but in your gaze, not in your decorations, but in your discernment. Because once you've been under the cloud, you can no longer tolerate counterfeit rain. The world will ask, was it real? And your answer will not be words. It will be your walk, your worship, your obedience, your refusal to go back to normal. When heaven touched the earth inside you, you are what remains. You are the altar left standing after the glory shook the house. And now, every step you take will whisper the truth. I was there. I tasted glory. And I will never live without it again. This is what remains when heaven has poured out, a people marked, moved, and never the same. Not because they saw something, but because something stayed inside them.